Today's stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I was gonna say sorry we're late, but we're actually 3 minutes early. And I'm here as somewhat usual with my good buddy, Leandro Facchinetti. Wow, I got it right the first time. Hi, Leandro.
Hello, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So Leandro and I were talking a little bit. We always talk before the stream, and then we're like, we should say this stuff on the stream. We thought it would be fun to dive into a bit of MIDI in JSFX coding, because we've done a lot of audio. We've not really touched the MIDI side, and I was curious about it, and also somebody emailed me about it ages ago. So we thought maybe we'll do that. What do you say, Leandro?
Yeah, let's try. I have never worked with MIDI before. I know more or less how it works in JSFX. We'll see. It will be fun.
Yeah, it'll be exploratory. And yeah, we'll see what we come up with. I guess let's talk a little bit about what we want to make. First, I have lots of MIDI JSFX ideas, but I think we're starting simple. We want a way to send MIDI messages to a track to mute it. That's basically all there is to it.
Yeah, so the idea comes from, I want to be able to mute my microphone when I am on a call or something. And of course, I run my audio through Reaper. And it would make sense for me to have some MIDI controller. I will probably make one myself, but have some MIDI controller. So I would like to be able to mute my microphone based on a MIDI message. And I know, because Arya told me 10 minutes ago, that it is possible in Reaper to map some actions to MIDI. So I could map, for instance, the mute track number 2 action to MIDI. But while that would work, it is kind of silly because I would have a button that is dedicated to muting track 2 on every project that I have open in Reaper ever and ever, which is a bit silly. So what I think I would like is for that mapping of this MIDI message corresponds to muting track X, I would like for that to be a project-bound setting. I would like to be able to switch to different project, and then my MIDI message does something else. And as far as I can tell, that's not possible to do in Reaper. I think that in, for instance, Ableton Live, you can do mappings that are project specific.
Right. Yeah.
But in Reaper, you cannot. Or maybe that's what what is it called? Recontrol? Relearn. Maybe that's what this is about.
Yeah, so Relearn can do that, and then that could be project-wide. I know a lot of people also just put Relearn in their monitoring effects, and that way everything is like global. You also have, so as you mentioned, like we have actions for set mute for track 3, etc. We have one for set mute for selected tracks, but I think even that won't work for you because I'm assuming you want not necessarily to have Reaper open as you're muting your mic. You don't want to open Reaper, select the track, and if you select a track and then minimize Reaper, like who knows what weird thing is going to happen.
Exactly.
So there is some merit to writing this JSFX, and even like, I don't know, fun stuff like you can automate that. So you could write a MIDI item that mutes and unmutes stuff like super fast or something like that.
That would be rather silly because I think that the mute itself is already something you can automate in Reaper.
You can automate it, yeah.
But, muting a track is probably the simplest thing you can do in JSFX.
Yeah.
So controlling that with MIDI is a great way to get your feet wet in MIDI.
Yeah. With muting, if you automate it, and if you also have do not process muted tracks, the automation may lag a little bit as you unmute stuff. So like it's a fun starting point. Let's just say that.
All right.
There are benefits to doing what we're doing, and maybe somebody's already done it, but we're just trying to learn some stuff.
Yeah.
Hello to 5 viewers who are lurking. Say hi, you know.
All right. Okay. So, do you want to jump in and try to write some code?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so I am going to set something up on this view. Oh no, you are not here.
Oh.
Now you're here.
There we go.
Okay, let's create a new effect. I will call this IDDQD Lee effect. Do you want to go with something functional like mute with MIDI? Or do you want to go with something silly?
No, mute with MIDI sounds good. Okay. Here's a side question. You know, like the command logo and the shift logo and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Do you just copy paste those from somewhere, or do you know the alt key for them?
I know that if I go into emoji view, and that's something that you can do with Control Command in space, or you can do with you press the FN function twice, or in some applications it's FNE, whatever. If you are here, and you can always click on Edit and go to emoji and symbols. If you are here, then there is this section with the symbols you would like.
Oh, very nice. You know what's annoying about Skype? I'm watching you from Skype. It's not showing your whole screen to me. Oh, wait. Okay, now it is. I just had to close chat.
Oh, okay. All right. So you have access to this editor as well. And at this point, you know a whole lot about JSFX. So you can start driving, and people will be able to see what you are typing over here on my machine, which is kind of cool. We are using live share here on Visual Studio Code.
Sure.
So, Arya, go ahead and write me an effect to mute the track.
All right, let's see. So I'm rusty on syntax, but let me try. I know we need some stuff up front, but I'm gonna skip for now and go to the init block. Whoopsie daisy. Init block. Why is this happening? Init, I said init. How can I just not select anything and just, okay, there we go. So we will have a slider block, right?
Yes, the way that I imagine this would work is we would have a slider for mute, not mute. And then we would control that slider from MIDI.
Cool. So when, I guess, so let's make a slider. This is where the syntax is going to get away from me. It's one of these, and let's call it slider 1. Let me know whenever I mess up.
No, write the thing you want to write, and then I can fix the syntax. But first, write the intent.
Okay, so I think you need a slider block that's called mute, and then we want the values to go from 0 to 1, and 0 will be mute, 1 would be unmute, and I guess we want the, whoa, what happened? I think as you're moving to other places, it moved me to another place.
Oh, okay, so that you can turn that off by clicking on this pin on the upper right.
Oh,
it's enabled now, and I have it disabled. So I'm able to go places where you're not, and now you are able to go places where I am not. And here is a cheat sheet for you. We wrote this together a couple months ago.
Oh, beautiful. That's perfection. Okay. So let me just make this small so I can see both of them. So slider 1 of these, let's just call it mute. And we want this to equal to 1, I guess, because when you load the effect, it would still be unmuted. We can, of course, make mute be 1, but that kind of makes weird sense to me. And we want it to just go up in increments of 1. And we want to call this mute. And, of course, I can add a description. Mute stuff with MIDI. And so I'm assuming at the sample level, if I want like mute is 0, that means it's muted. So I want SPL 0 equal SP. Now I know I'm writing this in stereo and I'm not making it multi-channel.
Whatever. My microphone is mono.
Right. Equals 0. And then one of these. And then else, if we just do nothing else, it would just, the code will just pass through, right? So that's all really we need in that side. So that's me. That's what I can think.
All right, let's give it a try. So I'm going to save this file, and I do believe I have only one Reaper instance running. So let me open another one, because the instance that is running the audio for our stream. Let's not mess that up. So on this one, my microphone is running through, and I will load the mute stuff with MIDI effect, and it's not muting anything. And if I switch to this, then it starts to mute. See?
All right.
That's nice. Now I wonder if I can simply bind some MIDI to this slider. I click on this, I go to param MIDI link, and then I can select the exact message that I want to link to this. There is probably a way to learn as well. So I'm going to click on learn, and I have a MIDI controller that I have developed on the stream way back using an Arduino. We built this ourselves on the stream. So I can just tap on something, and it seems to have worked. Ah, okay.
I think you need to do one extra step if you want it to be a toggle, and that is, so go back to learn. And you see CC mode is absolute. You can make it a toggle on the very bottom. So open that drop-down menu in CC mode, and then make it a toggle, and now press OK.
And there is only one, there is at most one MIDI message attached per slider. I cannot do multiple messages, right?
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
With ReaLearn you can, but I think natively, yeah, I think if you assign something else, it'll just overwrite what's currently there. And oh, it's my cat. Oh, and she's gone.
Okay, so this works. It does exactly what we wanted to do. But it doesn't teach us much about how to use MIDI in JSFX, because right now we are using MIDI in Reaper. And I will admit that this already fulfills the need. It's not really a need. Fulfills the silly request I made in the beginning. Now I can control the mute with my foot. Great. But that's not what we are here for. We want to process MIDI in JSFX. So I think that the setup that we are actually looking for is to have another track in which the input is MIDI. And then this track is enabled for recording as well. And we can see little squares here when I tap. And then we want to route the MIDI to that track. So now both tracks are receiving MIDI, and this track is receiving both my microphone as well as MIDI. And then this effect is receiving MIDI. Right now it's ignoring it, but it is receiving MIDI. So let me drop another instance of the plugin on the track. No, not this one. Mute stuff with MIDI. And now it's receiving the MIDI, but it's not toggling.
It doesn't know what to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go into the silly exercise of going completely overkill, because the previous setup with the parameter link was already project bound.
Right.
Which is already overkill, because I could have a dedicated button to mute track 2, but then what if I reorder my tracks and I forget about it, right? So.
And I guess like you'll also eliminate. Now I guess you can eliminate the process of having to learn it again by just saving it as an effects chain. But it's nice if like, well, we're gonna see if like we want to hardwire that button to mute, and whatever the JSFX track is on. In fact, I think like you can mute multiple tracks that way if you just put multiple instances of this on multiple tracks, right? They will all in a way be like linked. Yeah, that is kind of a fun application.
Yeah, but I think you could do that with parameter linking, right? Because it is probably going to be remembered in the effects chain, right?
Yeah, it won't. It will only overwrite if you learn the same thing with another effect. But if you just keep like assigning the same button to the same stuff, it'll just work. If not, the MPL macro setup definitely can work with multiple things.
Now, yeah, I'm curious about this because that's surprising to me. I have never worked with this stuff before, but I would imagine that you could bind multiple things to the same MIDI message.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah.
And then
it will be overwritten if you choose a different button.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
But I now want to put this to test. I will bind both of them like so. And when I tap, they both toggle.
Yeah.
Okay. At least that much is true.
Oh, are they reverse toggled? Oh, yeah, it is, but that's fine.
Yeah, they are because they started reversed and they are both toggling. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I don't think this does, and perhaps it will justify the whole, it won't, but it would justify the whole endeavor, is it would be nice if besides my push buttons on my Arduino, I also connected an LED. And then the Arduino is right now acting as a sender of MIDI messages, but it can also receive MIDI messages. Right now, it's just dropping. It is actually receiving MIDI messages. It's enabled here in Reaper. So it is receiving MIDI messages and dropping them on the floor. But it could be fun to program the Arduino to receive a message and then light up the LED. So the LED would become like the mic is on kind of thing from within Reaper, which is kind of cool. I could probably do this on my like audio interface or something, but it's kind of cool.
You can even do it in Reaper, but it takes a long time. Like it takes a while to get it to control a light that goes on. So making it in like a neat JS form, it's fun.
Yeah.
Hello, Bo. How are you doing?
And I guess probably what we are doing is overkill because relearn exists. Anyway, let's stop pointing out how silly this endeavor is and get into MIDI processing in JSFX. So what we need is to learn how JSFX deals with MIDI. Let's go to the docs. I guess we want to go to MIDI functions. And then this is the function used to send MIDI. So this is the function we would use to send the light is on or light is off message to the Arduino. But That's not what we're doing now. What we are doing is receive. So there were other flavors of MIDI send, but we are interested in receiving MIDI. And then I think at this point I need to give a brief explainer of what I already know about MIDI processing and how it will work. So you know how in JSFX we have the sample section that is running on every sample as it comes in, but we also have the block section, and that is for each block of audio, each buffer, in my case, for each 256 samples. So this is a section of code that will run every 256 samples. And as far as I understand, the MIDI receiving mechanism in Reaper does not work at the sample level, it works at the block level.
Yeah.
And it is kind of silly because if you have received a MIDI message in the middle of the block, then typically the way that this is going to work is you're going to receive the MIDI message with an offset. So it will be running in the block section, which only runs on every block. It doesn't run on every sample. So you will receive the MIDI message on the block section, and it will tell you, yeah, I received this message now, and the offset, which is this first variable here, is like 100. So now you know that you received this message not in the boundary of the block. You received that message 100 samples into the block. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, the offset was the part about this that I didn't understand the first time I read it. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it is kind of on the one hand, this is more true to life. This is the way that MIDI would be handled in C++, in VSTs, audio units, and so on. This is the way that MIDI is handled, for instance, in Juice and iPlug, as we talked about on Wednesday on my channel. Well, we talked about Juice, not about MIDI. But anyway, so on the one hand, it is more close to how things work. But on the other hand, it is kind of maybe disappointing because we do have this beautiful abstraction, which is the sample section, which is great because it simplifies a bunch of things. And it's great that this abstraction exists, so we don't have to keep looping over all the samples in the processing of a block. So it's beautiful that we have this abstraction for audio. Why don't we have it for MIDI? And we just don't have it in JSFX. There is a escape hatch. If you are using Tails library for JSFX, he has built an abstraction that works pretty much like the sample abstraction, but for MIDI. And
so it's on a tick level?
Yeah, so then you can ask about MIDI messages that arrived at this sample, and the sample section is able to handle MIDI directly. And
that's genius.
It is great. I don't think we should go ahead and use that. I think we should learn the MIDI for what it is first, and then maybe look into the library. But the implementation of how this is done is something that we talked about when Tail was over in the beginning of the year. So I guess about January or February.
Sounds good. And actually, I have a hypothesis I want to test out, maybe when we know a little bit about it, which is I have a theory that the JS arpeggiator is not perfectly on time. And I wonder if it has something to do with this structure. So maybe we can look into the code and figure that out now. If it's like one block size off, I'll probably will not hear that. Few people will. But I would like to investigate what's up with the JS arpeggiator, because I've noticed some lateness, some weird behaviors.
Okay. I took note of this so we remember. Okay, so first, let's read over what is here, because I think that this is the only part that we care about. Here is a different flavor of receiving MIDI messages. We don't care about that. And that's another flavor that is for the system extensions. We don't care about that. And that's that. I think that the only part of the documentation that we care about is this. So let's read this carefully. The above example will filter the node ons on channel 0. So for people who are getting started into MIDI, a MIDI message can be sent on 16 channels, so you can have like pretend that you have 16 keyboards or one keyboard, a foot controller, and that kind of thing. They can talk in different channels, and you can process this separately. And the note on event is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you press a key on the keyboard. So it will filter the note ons. So it will remove the note ons on channel 0 from the list of MIDI events. So if you have an effect, like let's say you have some kind of synthesizer, I will put resynth on the track just because it's so light. So if you have multiple resynths, they all receive MIDI messages. But if you have this little block here in the middle, then the previous resynths will receive the message, but the following resynths won't.
Hello, Mage and Bops, the usual suspects of coding live streams. Good to have you all here.
Yeah. And then we'll actually look at the code and see how this is done. But this is on a high level what it's doing. The construct above is commonly used. If any of the MIDI receive functions are called, one must always get all events and send any events desired to be passed through. This is actually an interesting point, because if you are receiving the message, as far as I understand, I think we should probably test this because we are exploring the MIDI facilities in JSFX. I think that if you don't touch MIDI, you never call MIDI receive, then the MIDI is just passed through. If you call MIDI receive, it's a sync. You are syncing all the MIDI messages into your plugin. And now it's your responsibility to forward the MIDI messages to the plugins down the chain if that's something that you think should be done. For instance, for messages you don't recognize, you just forward them to the next plugin in the chain.
So I guess my question is, in audio, like if you do nothing, it just gets passed through. So in MIDI, if you do nothing to certain parts of it, that also will just get passed through. Like you have to receive everything, do what you want with the parts you need, but do you need extra code to pass on the rest?
I think that the answer is yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and we should investigate this because I remember playing around with some synthesizers that did not behave like this. And I think that there were some events that it was not consuming but not passing through either. I think it was just swallowing all the events and not passing anything through. I don't remember the specifics. It was a while back. So we should explore this and see how the forwarding works in different plugins just to see what people do. But it seems like, as far as I understand, the intent is you recognize some events like note ons. And if you recognize the event, you treat the event, maybe you generate audio because you are a synthesizer. And if you do not recognize the event, you forward it. It seems like that is supposed to be the right behavior. I think that resynth, for instance, does not do that. It recognizes an event, for instance, a note on, it plays the audio for that note, and it passes on the message anyway.
And even not only recent, like, because you can just grab any three like VST3i instruments and just put them next to each other, and when you play, they all play, unless you like change the channel or and the same thing with like if you move the mod wheel on all of them moves. So that may be just the default way that Reaper deals with it. So everything works as a MIDI through rather than like a MIDI in and out.
Yeah. Let's explore this real quick and understand how this is actually working in practice. If people are following this recommendation or if they are doing something else. So I guess to test this, perhaps the best way would be to, I guess just 2 is enough. We do have this channel that is the MIDI source. I will call this MIDI. And we have this other channel that is our mute. But then let's have also routing to this track. And then routing to that one. And I'm always just sending MIDI. I'm never sending audio. So if I put a synthesizer here, and I put another synthesizer there, when I play a note, the MIDI will come here, be routed into that, and then be routed into that. But the audio only goes out of each track individually. So I think that with this setup, we can tell if the plugin is forwarding the MIDI or if it's swallowing the MIDI. Do you agree that this is the correct setup?
Yeah, my theory is that it won't swallow. It will forward.
Yeah, I think that some plugins will swallow, some plugins will forward. So I will open the virtual keyboard because my foot controller is not sending note on events. It's sending CC messages. Right, so when I send like a C, like a note on, both plugins are receiving the MIDI and both plugins are outputting audio. So Resynth is forwarding even events that it recognizes, which seems to fly in the face of this recommendation. Now,
I think even any other instrument that you choose other than Resynth, like grab any random third-party thing, I think the behavior will remain the same. Or I'm pretty sure it will remain the same.
This is how you write synth?
Yeah.
Struggle with that a bit. Okay, so that's Resynth. Now let's repeat these two tracks. And we'll call this Surge. I trust the Surge developers to be up on their game when it comes to like following standards and good practices. So I'll even use the latest version, and VST3 seems to be the way to go, I think. And then that. And now place your bets. What do you think is going to happen?
I think they all play Nobody Will Swallow. Oh, what? Why did the second Resynth... Oh, wait, did you copy...
I think that the routing is messed up.
Yeah,
I think that the routing is messed up.
I think so too.
Yeah, let's delete
just
all the
route
roots.
Like top to bottom, you know?
Fair enough, fair enough. I'm deleting all the sends and receives because I'm messing things up. Okay, so now all the tracks are just sending to master as usual. I can tell that because of the callers here. And then let's try this again. So MIDI goes to there. Then MIDI goes to there. Then MIDI goes there. Then MIDI goes here. Okay.
I even have like an old tutorial on this where we looked at like ways of kind of layering synths. And one thing you can do also is you can have like the child of a child of a child of a child. And then you send MIDI like up that way. Or you can have them all on the same track and you can change the layering by the amount of wet dry on a MIDI effects. Just works as a volume knob. Or you can just send them to different channels and receive them from different tracks, so you have like control over each individual one. So I think, and to me it makes sense. Well, I guess end of story. To me it makes sense.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I thought that Surge was not doing that, but perhaps it was all along and my test setup back in the day was wrong, or perhaps they changed this. Anyway, so it seems like the correct behavior is not to swallow some messages. It's always to pass through. We'll get into the code and see how we need to, what we need to write to do that. Anyway.
And one last thing from this that I'm feeling like, let me know if I'm understanding this incorrectly. But the reason that it filters, it's not like by default it's swallowing things. It's filtering because we told it to filter those notes, right? Otherwise, everything gets passed through, right?
Yeah, so in this example, it is just filtering a couple note ons. So supposedly this is the intent of the effect. It's like an arpeggiator has the intent of mangling with the note ons and offs. The intent of this is to filter some things. Yeah. Yeah, and it may be my reading of this send any events desired to be passed through. Maybe my reading of this is too strict in the sense that when I read this, I understood that you are only supposed to send events that you don't process. But maybe it is just you probably want to pass through any events anyway, and this example is kind of a very specific kind of effect. Anyway, and then it says here that if there only 3 parameters are passed to MIDI receive, so this version, the third parameter, this one, will receive both the second and third bytes of the MIDI message. Second byte plus third byte times 256. Calling MIDI receive will automatically pass through any, I guess it's system extensions, right? SysX stands for that. Events encountered if you wish to process the system. Extensions are system exclusive. I don't remember. Use this one instead. So we are not going to deal with system X.
Yeah.
But
old stuff.
We do need to know what this message 1, 2, and 3 are all about. We need to look at the structure of a MIDI message in terms of like the bytes.
Yeah.
And I guess we can look at the code here first, and then we can look at the structure of the message. So what they have here is a while loop. So what I understand is that this MIDI receive thing, it may seem as though it is a function that would return the MIDI message, and it kind of does that, but in a weird way. This is a pattern that you often see in languages like C, and the thing is, we would like to return multiple values. We would like to return an offset. We would like to return the different bytes of the MIDI message. But we are only allowed one return. We can only return one thing. And also, we would like to return whether there was a message at all, because sometimes you're calling MIDI receive, but no one pressed any key, so there is no MIDI to be received. So we would like to return, I guess in this case, 5 things. Offset, message 1, message 2, message 3. Is there a message at all? You would like to return 5 things. You cannot. There is no way to return multiple things in JSFX, just like there is no way to return multiple things in C. So what you do is you pass as arguments. These are not input arguments, they are outputs. So you pass a variable called offset, and this is an arbitrary name you make up. But okay, I guess I will write this down so it is a bit clearer. So what we would like, to call MIDI receive and do something like this.
Okay, well, is there a message plus the rest? Okay.
We would like to be able to write this. And you would in languages like Python. You could write exactly this. But this is JSFX. So what they do instead is you take some of the arguments that wouldn't generally be outputs, you pass as if they were inputs, but they're not. They are really outputs. And one of these, because you do have one return, so use it, one of these is returned. So
gotcha.
The important thing to note is that typically when you call a function, the variable that was passed does not change. If you have something like, typically, if you have a function, let's say that you have the max function. That is a function that takes the maximum between 2 numbers. So if you have numbers x and y, and x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 3, you know for sure that at this point, x is still equal to 2 and y is still equal to 3. The function will not change the variables that were passed into it. That's the typical function. They work like this. This is not a typical function. This is a function that comes with JSFX, and it has magical powers. First of all, you would be able to call this function with the numbers directly. You would be able to call it like this, and it means exactly the same as that. 100% the same, indistinguishable. But in this case, you cannot pass an offset into this. You cannot write it like this. It has to be a variable. And this magical function will change this offset variable. So if for any reason you set offset to be 2, it might as well be the case that after you call the function, offset is now 3. So it has the magic power of changing the value of the variables that were passed in.
Is this at all similar to, with video effects, we had like variables that we had a hashtag in front of?
That's similar, yes. So that was for strings. But yeah, in some string functions, we have this kind of behavior as well. So for the C folks out there, in essence, what I'm saying is this is a pass of a... You could think of this as passing a pointer, and then this is magic. But you can also think of this as pass by reference, which is a completely different kind of argument passing, and some languages have this. JSFX doesn't really have pass by reference except for the magic functions that come with JSFX and work with a pass by reference kind of policy. Anyway, so...
I'm sure C people got that. I'm like, what?
You sure what?
I'm sure people who know C understood that, because for me it was like, whoa, what?
Yeah, the call by value, call by reference is just fancy names for the concept I just explained. So max is a call by value function, and this is a call by reference function. Whatever. And there are different calling policies for different kinds of functions. Anyway, so now we know that the function is going to return 5 values, 4 of them using this magic parameter passing, 1 of them with this. And if we were just interested in receiving 1 MIDI message, we could write code that looks like this.
So just for my clarity, like if was there a MIDI message variable will be 0 if there's no messages being sent, and then it will not be 0 once stuff starts to happen.
Yes, so this is going to return either 0 or 1, representing false or true, respectively. And then we can ask, was there a MIDI message? If so, then run this block of code that will process the MIDI.
Gotcha.
But we are generally not interested in receiving 1. We are interested in receiving as many messages as there are. So instead of having a conditional, we typically use a loop. And we could write the loop like this. Right? Remember, this is just a variable. So now we are saying, if there was a MIDI message, then run this block. And at the end, get the next message. And if there was another MIDI message, run this block. And then ask for the next message. And if there was a next message, process the next message. And if there were no other messages, get out of the loop.
Nice.
But this repetition can be kind of boring. So what people do is this. Because remember, this is going to return true or false anyway. So you might as well just put it here. And then all these variables that were magically assigned are just available to you here. So very convenient. And that's why this kind of pattern is common. And that's why they gave it here on the example.
Nice.
So then we can look at the block of code that will do the processing of the MIDI. It will have available to it these variables. They will exist here by magic because they have been assigned by the magic MIDI receive function. And they will be the bytes of the MIDI message and the offset into the block as I explained before.
I don't understand the $X situation. What up with that?
Yeah, let's get into this. So, well, I guess let's start by reading this from the bottom because it's easier. This is just saying send the MIDI message through. So we are just forwarding the message, copy and paste kind of thing. Very, very simple. Then what we learned is that in our effect, we most often want to do this. We want to forward this message because that seems to be the behavior that most other plugins have. So let's just take this out of the conditional, like so. So the way that things are written here, we will always send the message through. Then let's read this. This is detecting. Do we have a node on event on channel 0? That's what it says here, right? Node on event on channel 0. So a MIDI message is a sequence of bytes, and we are receiving each byte separately. It seems like the first byte on the left is the action. Oh, is it the...
I thought it would just be channel and then the values, but I guess that's just for node-ons.
Yeah,
so,
I guess that
so
this
that's
is
too general.
I guess you are right. The 9 is node on and 0 is the channel.
Uh-huh.
And then what is part byte 3?
Velocity, though it's irrelevant in the example. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. You are right. I think you are right. I think that this is node on, channel 0. This would be the node. So if you press the C or an F, and this is the velocity. So some MIDI controllers will send node on and node off, but some MIDI controllers will send node on with a velocity greater than 0 for when you press, and node on with a velocity equals to 0 when you release. So it is checking that it's a node on by checking that the velocity is not 0.
Yeah.
And then it's doing whatever. It's just counting the number of notes that have been played. So let's actually put this in the block section and see how it behaves. And I have a tendency to put the block section before.
Yeah,
not that it matters. Like... And since these sections are empty, let's just not have them for now. So now we have a plugin that is supposed to be counting the number of notes that are played, but also forwarding everything. Let's see if it does that. And the MIDI that is received here can go through our effect before it is passed on. So we will be able to look at the count, but we'll also be able to see if the forwarding is in place. Okay, it is there. Now let's look at the count. It's here. And then I will press some keys.
Yeah, so message 2 is note like note value, but message 3 seems not to be velocity.
And interestingly, the note counter is not incrementing.
Yeah. What is up?
Well,
are you sure that we can just not have the init block and it would still work? I feel like you need the init block even if there's nothing in it, if I remember right.
I remember reading that all sections are optional. All the code sections are optional, though an effect would likely have limited use if it doesn't have
without any of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, it's not a limited use. In fact, it's not of limited use. If I remember correctly, Kenny Joya has a video about this. He is doing effects chains that have some spacers for organizational purposes, or maybe because you have an effects chain that you would like to put a random effect in the middle, like this is an EQ compressor and this is a delay, but in the middle you're supposed to put either chorus or some other kind of modulation. So there is a spacer. That spacer could be a JSFX that doesn't do anything. It takes 0 CPU. So there you have it. Anyway, I think that all sections are optional, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. So let's have an init that doesn't do anything. And I saved, and it still behaves the same, I think. Yeah.
But now, so message 3 for a moment was 127. Did you catch that?
Yeah, when I'm holding it, it is doing things. And when I release, it stops doing things.
Okay, so that is velocity, but just for some reason at the beginning it was just kept being 0.
No, I don't think that's velocity because the number is... Oh, I thought that the number was changing for message 3. It's not changing.
It was changing. I don't know if the virtual MIDI keyboard works in this way, but if you go higher up the key, will the velocity get higher and lower down the key? Or sorry, the other way around. So if you press C1 but go up the key, will it have a lower velocity? When I say go up the key, I mean go vertically above. Yeah, you see that?
Ah, I didn't know that was a thing. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we are right that message 3 is the velocity. We are...
But it's not counting right now.
And message 1 doesn't seem to be working well for us.
Well, message 1 should be channel 0 because we didn't do anything, right? So it's channel 0.
Oh, I think that that's the issue. I'm sending the MIDI to message 2, and that's why it's not counting.
Oh, there we go.
One thing to note is that when we say channel 0, we started counting on 0. But on the user interface of most things, it's counted starting on 1. So MIDI channel 1 is actually represented with a 0 there. And now if I play, the note counter is going up. Great.
There we go. Awesome.
And this message 1 is not showing here for us, but we know that it's now this. So because it is working. So now it's time for us to actually dive into what's this $X kind of thing. That is a way of writing in hexadecimal because it is a more convenient way of writing about bits and bytes.
Mm-hmm.
And it is more convenient because it seems like MIDI was designed in such a way that this first number in hexadecimal means something, and the second number in hexadecimal means something. And by incidentally, that's probably why there are 16 channels in MIDI, because it is a hexadecimal system. So you can take the channel and represent it with a single digit in hexadecimal, which is convenient. Right. And this is just a prefix you put on a number to say this number is not being written in decimal, it's being written in hexadecimal.
$X. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So something like...
Is there one for binary?
So something like this is a number, actually.
Yeah.
Because A is 10 and F is 16. Or it's 15. It's actually 16, isn't it? No, it's 15. It's 15 in hexadecimal.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I would like for this to be a thing, but it's not. Not in JSFX. There is no way for you to write binary directly. You have to write hexadecimal or decimal.
Gotcha.
Okay, so...
Yeah, message 3 should be 0 for note off. Yeah, that's standard, right? Like a note off message is a note on message with the same note count and velocity of 0.
It depends on the controller. There are controllers that send an honest-to-goodness note-off event.
Okay, I guess that's... Yeah, I can see where that will be useful, especially if you have, I guess, like a theremin-like instrument.
Yeah, you see, like this virtual MIDI keyboard is actually sending a note-off event.
Interesting.
So this recontrol MIDI effect is kind of cool because it allows us to see the actual bytes that were received. And we can see the 9-0 going on here. And I bet that if I change the channel, we'll start to see 9-1. And if I go to like 16, we'll see 9F.
But one note on the note off is that if you look at the velocity, it's 0. So it's like interpreting it as a note off.
Yeah, but it's also changing the action here from 9 to 8.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know too much about MIDI, but I suppose that this first digit in hexadecimal is the action. The second is the channel, and then it depends on the action, right? On note on, it is the note that was played. So I think that if I go up the keyboard,
it'll be 26. Yeah, like that would be 36.
Yeah, I can go up the keyboard in steps and we see the middle number changing. And for whatever reason, it's lagging like hell. Whatever. So that is the note that was played, and then the velocity in which that was played. So I will click and drag, and we can see the velocity going up and down.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then on the note off event, that starts with an H, it seems like the second byte is the note that was depressed on the keyboard. And then the third byte seems to be just a boilerplate. It's just a filler for messages to have the same size. It's just a bunch of zeros, just padding. And I suppose that in other messages, we will see other things. We'll see other numbers here on the second and third channel. So let's press my foot controller that sends CC. So it seems like CC starts with a B instead of
which is
9
11.
or 8. Correct. And then this is probably the kind of CC that I sent. I suppose that it's showing me here CC64 because that's usually how it is shown to users. If I go to param and try to link a slider, it will show CC64. It will not show this in hexadecimal.
Yeah.
But I bet that this 40 is 64 in hexadecimal. So let's prove that this is the case. So 40 hex in decimal. It is 64. And then the third byte seems to be the velocity. And in this case, it doesn't really make sense because I'm just holding a pedal. I'm holding like the sustain pedal on a keyboard kind of thing. But I also have one of those rockers, like a wah-wah or an expression pedal kind of thing. And then we can see that it's still B0 because it's still a CC. In this case, it is the message number 1, CC1.
Mod wheel.
Yeah, it's sending the mod wheel in this case. And we can see values going from 0 up to 7D, which is almost 127. It's almost at the end of the scale. It seems like my expression pedal cannot go all the way up. But yeah, this is the structure of the MIDI message. Pretty straightforward. So in our effect, now we have to decide what is the MIDI message that we want to process. And I guess before we do that, let's play around with that forwarding thing. Let's see what happens if we forget to forward. So right now, if I play, you can see all the plugins receiving MIDI. But what happens if I swallow the MIDI message? Yeah, it's not passing through anymore.
Nothing goes through. Nice.
And what happens if I comment the whole block in such a way that we are not calling MIDI receive? Then it should be back into forwarding mode, and it is.
Cool.
Okay, that corresponds to our expectations. So I think that this is a, and I don't think that the init block was doing anything. It was just that my channel was wrong here. So it's still working just the same. So now Aria can take over and write us the rest of this because we know how to process MIDI.
Okay, I'll give it a go. So message 1. Oh, I don't have to tell you. I can just do it from here. So now if I press the pin, I will follow you to this new place. Okay, there we go. So our message 1 needs to be B0, correct? Our message 3, when it's not 0, so we don't need that bit right now, with the fact that when it's not 0, something is sent. But I need to process message 2, correct?
Yeah.
So I gotta go message 2 needs to equal to 40. And of course hexadecimal 40, so $X40. And and I think like we do that and we go, if these 2 bits are true, then so if both those things are correct, then we are receiving the thing. And what do we want to do with the thing? We want if message 3 then is, if message 3 is, I guess I can just say not 0. Doesn't really matter, right? If message, oh, sorry, I'm doing the wrong syntax. Everybody chill.
I really hate when we are doing anything, not just coding. You're just doing anything, and you're in the middle of doing it, and someone is like, missed a spot. Oh, come on. Let me finish the thing first.
Okay, so if message 3 is not 0, what we want is to say mute. No, I'm dumb. Let's see. How am I doing this? Because in sample, yeah, I guess mute equals 1. Make that happen. And else, just don't worry about it. And send everything else through. And in the sample block, we're saying if mute is 0, 0 everything out. And otherwise, don't worry about it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that this is going to let us go from mute equals 0 to mute equals 1. So let's see if it actually works. I will first reload the plugin.
Did you suddenly go dark mode, or did I just notice
it is
that
getting late, so it
I
went
see.
to dark mode by.
Do you have Night Owl, that app?
No, I have System Preferences General Auto.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and this is smart enough to know where I am and to know when it gets dark here.
Nice.
So it changes over the year. Right, so it's supposed to be able to go from 0 to 1, right? Because that's the code we wrote here. So let's put this to 0 by hand. Then I will press the pedal and it goes to 1.
Okay.
Looking good. And I'm no longer running this effect on the right track. I'm now running this on the MIDI track, but it's supposed to be here on the mute track. So let me move over that to there, and I can remove this from here. And now I'll have to close a bunch of things. So right now it is letting the audio run through. It is letting the audio run through. But if I do this, it's not letting the audio, and I can press the foot switch, and now it's letting the audio run through. That's half of the battle.
And now we need to write the code for the reverse of that to happen.
I would like to I guess the note, not the note on, because it's a CC message. But when I press, I would like it to toggle, and when I release, I don't want to change anything. So I don't want this to be a push to talk. I want this to be a toggle. I want to be able to press, go into talking mode, press, go into like I am fiddling with something on my desk mode.
Gotcha. Fortis and stuff, you're late. You're gonna get an F this semester. No, it's good that you're joining us. Okay, so we are now. So right now we kind of have like a one-way toggle. It's not a latch. We just have. If it's 0, it'll make it 1. Now we want the next time we play this to make the 1 a 0. Very interesting. So again, okay, I see. So where I'm saying message 3 is not equal to 0, do that. That's not enough. That's not enough. It's kind of like there, we got to go like, if it's not 0 the first time, mute it. Then the next time, unmute it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Okay.
And by the way, you got the syntax completely right the first try.
Yeah. That's
Impressive.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. Doesn't happen to me every time.
Yeah. Okay, so the first time it's like that, do that. The second time, I guess. I mean, I can think of something, but let me know if this is like hella dumb. If message 3 isn't 0 and mute is 1, in that case, make mute a 0? Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Let's
Okay.
save and let's try. Now it goes to 0 and doesn't come back.
Okay, let's examine the code. So if... Oh, I see. Because you were on 1, you went to 0, and now... Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if this is the most elegant fix, but how's about this?
You are filling me with pride.
Yeah,
Let's test this.
Dirty as hell. Oh, wait. I got one piece of the syntax wrong. Let me fix that.
Okay.
And now I think I'm ready to present.
No, it's going
you
to 0
fucking-
and not coming back.
And mute is 0, set mute to 1. If message 3 is and mute is 1, set to 0. Oh, okay. I got one more idea. And again, this may be just the dirtiest of all tricks. And I think I have another idea why it's not working. And that is that this whole thing is in a while loop. So if it gets stuck somewhere, right?
What do you mean by getting stuck?
Like if it, let's say my first message is message 3 isn't 0 and mute is 1, make mute 0. But if mute is 0, it doesn't get stuck there. It just goes, it's not, goodbye.
Skips over.
Yeah, skips over. And then the next one is if message 3 isn't 0 and mute is... Oh, okay. So another theory that I have... No, I don't know. Okay, I feel like this should work. I feel like this last thing I did should work.
I saved. I am reloading. And now it's stuck in 1, but if I go to 0, I can get back to 1. I cannot get out.
Okay, so I think the structure of this is wrong. We're saying grab that message, and if it's not 0 and mute is 1, make mute 0. If that message is not 1 and mute is 0, make a 1. But that structure is wrong.
I want you to think about it this way.
Oh!
Okay, I think you got it. There you go.
Oh my god. Okay.
You were setting mute to 0, and then the next line would set it back to 1. So you were able to toggle, but you were undoing the work on the next line.
I gotcha. Else, haha. It's probably really dirty. It's probably not elegant at all, but
here it is.
Maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah. All right. It is working. Congratulations. I think we did it, right? Did we want to do anything else with this? I think we're done.
Did we want to do anything else with this? No, I think but
we could be fancy and maybe have a slider that allows you to select which MIDI message will be used. We do have some JSFX that do this. A slider is essentially this number.
Gotcha.
But who has time for that?
Yeah. So just for my own curiosity, is there a more elegant way? Because it is a lot of like copying and pasting almost that I did.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this so we have something to compare to. But here are the things I would change. First of all, on the sample block, I would say that right now it is muting when it's 0 and it's not muting when it's 1. I think it should be the other way around.
Because it's like mute, yes. So I get, yeah.
So first I would change that. Can you change that for me?
Sure. So if mute is 1, do that thing. I think the rest of the code should be okay, except that we'll want it now by default to be 0.
Yeah, correct. Yes, there is. You said the right thing and you wrote it the wrong way. So I'm going to fix the syntax because I know you have the right
okay.
logic. You just didn't write it correctly. So the symbol you want here is that to compare for
Oh, that's
equality,
right.
and you want this symbol here to do a conditional. That's
Gotcha.
exactly right. And incidentally, it worked last time, right? This is what you wrote before. Hang on. This is what you have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you wrote before. Can you see why this was sort of working anyway?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's like mute. Yeah, that first bit, like mute question mark, makes no sense to me.
So here's how this works. You have this piece of syntax that is like condition question mark. I'm going to call this the then case.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the else case. So if the condition is true, then run this.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise run that. What you wrote
So
is that.
yeah,
So if mute is true, then 0. In other words, don't do anything.
everything's yeah.
It's no operation. Otherwise, mute. So that's why it was incidentally working, and that's why it was the opposite, right? When you had mute on, you wouldn't do anything, and when mute was off, you would actually mute.
Gotcha.
I will reverse because this is your original code. I shouldn't be touching it. Right, so now this is doing the right thing. Only mute if mute is equal to 1. I think it will work. Let's see. So now it is mute equals 0, and now it is mute equals 1. Correct. Mute equals 1, muting the output. Mute equals 0, the output is there. Awesome.
Nice.
Now, we can make this multi-channel if you want. Do you want to go ahead and try that?
Well, you were saying if it's, I guess, for a muting of the mic, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In fact, the multi-channel stuff is to create a loop, and we have gone over that several times together. So perhaps it's not a useful exercise for now. I'm not going to rewrite this. It was good the way it was before. Right. Okay.
Tarek is saying, hi, Tarek. He's saying, will a formula mute equals mute minus 1 work to toggle between the values?
You're saying
how
this.
would that work? Yeah.
I suppose that this is what you're saying. So let's think this through. Or let's put this here and see what happens. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay.
Well, so, I guess if it goes minus 1, it'll be like 1, then it'll be 0. Will it then not be like minus 1 and keep going back? Okay.
And the truth is that in JSFX, when we use the conditional, 0 is false, but anything that is not 0 is true. So minus 1 is also true. So you will get into minus 1, minus 2, minus 3 territory, and from there, you don't recover. It will always be muting.
Mage is saying to toggle mute from 0 to 1, I do message 3. Like if message 3 isn't equal to 0, mute equals the absolute of mute minus 1.
Okay, I see.
And Tarek meant 1 minus mute. Interesting.
That is more like it.
Okay.
Because think about how this is going to work. If mute is 0, then it will be 1 minus 0 is 1. If mute is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0.
Oh, smart. Cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
That is a clever way of doing this, but there is one thing I don't like about it. And that is, we know that 0 is false and any other number is true. In particular, 1 is true. And we use it that way. But I try to avoid reasoning about truthiness in terms of numbers. We know that that's how the representation works, and we know that this will work. But I don't like to reason about truthiness in terms of numbers. I think that if I ask you, what is 1 minus true, your answer should be, right?
I see.
We know that it is a number, but 1 minus true is not a question one should be asking. So I would
Gotcha.
prefer to reason about this in terms of Booleans, because that's what they are. They are true or false. That's what
Yeah.
people call a Boolean. It was, I think, a scientist whose name was Boole, and he worked on computer sciencey and mathematical things.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I prefer to reason about this in terms of Booleans, and there is a way of doing this. You can say not. The exclamation mark means not. So if I say not 0, it is 1. And if I say not 1, it is 0. Incidentally, minus not this is also 0.
Ah.
But I prefer this because it is using the mute variable as a Boolean instead of trying to do arithmetic with it. So while I think that 1 minus true is not something you should be reasoning about, not true is perfectly reasonable.
So that could be a toggle for any variable, just that variable is not itself.
Yeah. And if you read this equality as, if you read this symbol as equality, this is nonsense, because mute is equal to not mute doesn't really make sense.
Right.
But you should not read this as equality. You should read this as assignment. So mute on the left is receiving the value of this expression. Mute on the right is the previous value of mute. So that's the way the cookie crumbles on this one. So yeah, with that, we can use this idea to simplify some stuff over there. For, I guess, in particular, what we are interested in is to use this concept over here. And now, without looking at the chat, because people may be giving away the answer, can you change this code to make use of that and preserve the functionality? Let's not break the plugin.
Sure. I would just say, if message 3 isn't 0, then mute equals to not itself, and then remove or comment out this bit and uncomment out this bit. Would that work?
I'm over the leader. Yes, I think that's going to work. Let's see. Okay, we are on the right track. Let me use the foot switch. Yep, it is working.
Nice.
But we can take this a step further.
Okay.
There is another simplification we can make, but you were going to say something. What was that?
Mage was saying, I want to look at what Mage is doing too, because there's a function there that I feel like I don't remember. Oh, okay, I now remembered what it does. But Mage is saying he would do, if message 3 isn't equal to 0, then mute equals absolute of mute minus 1. So the absolute thing just removes the negative from the equation, right? The apps, yeah.
Exactly, yes. So in this case, if mute is 0, we would get minus 1, 1.
Which is 1.
And if we get mute is equal to 1, that's 1 minus 1, 0. Absolute of 0 is 0. So that also works. But then again, not only you are treating this as arithmetic, which I ask people not to do. We sometimes do this in the library that we are writing for JSFX. We sometimes do this because sometimes it's useful, but try not to. And in this case, it's even adding one other operation to the mix. So I really think that this is the best way to express the intent here.
Okay, now you had another thing to do to simplify this.
Yeah, the simplification that I have in mind is actually pretty simple, because you are doing a conditional, and then the first thing you do in the body of the conditional is another conditional. We can merge the two, and that they become one conditional with one more part to it. And I'm not sure my explanation is clear, so I will write this one. So the intent, the thing I'm trying to say is this.
Yeah, beautiful.
I merged the two conditionals. And now this is pretty elegant. I don't know of a way of simplifying this further. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that any further simplification would make this better. I think it would only make it worse. We can make it shorter, but I don't think we can make it better. Because it's
Right.
pretty clear. We are essentially just matching the message like this. And if the message is met, then we do the thing we want to do, and we always forward everything. So if it was
Nice.
me, I would probably go and do some stylistic changes just because I think it reads better this way. I would probably
Mm-hmm.
write it like this. I would definitely put spaces here. And maybe because it's so short, I would do it like this.
Same line. Yeah.
And actually, there is one more thing we can do. If mute is equal to 1, this equal to 1 is not strictly necessary because mute is already 0 or 1. It's already true or false.
Ah,
So we don't need to compare it to anything. It doesn't hurt
yeah.
to have this here, but I would again say that you are reasoning about this in terms of numbers, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't. And in the library that I'm developing, we actually have a constant called true and a constant called false, just so that we can say things like this when we need. But in this case, we don't
Mm-hmm.
even need that. We can just say it like this.
Nice.
And I guess as a final touch, I would make this variable name under not capitalized, because that's the convention in the language.
Here's another thing. Since in this case, like if we want to make this multi-channel, we don't even necessarily need to loop, because can we not say like SPL of any number equals to 0? Like, do we have to loop through that to do the thing, or can we just say all SPL, like, or I guess we can make a function for that, right?
We don't have a way of saying all SPLs, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure that functions would help. So I think that there are two options. We can either have a loop, or if you're not feeling like a loop, if you're not in the loop mood, you can do this. Actually, hang on. Let me, what do I want to do with this? I want to say SPL of n
Yeah.
is equal to, and then join with space. So never mind,
Nice.
the thing that I wrote here in the console is not something you should worry about. It was just a quick way of being able to get this line. So this is something that actually comes up often because looping is expensive. It takes a bunch of CPU to do looping, and this is fast from a CPU standpoint. So you find code that looks like this, sometimes written by other code, and sometimes, honest to goodness, written by hand. Justin Johnson of 3Q fame said that he wrote code in this style, but it wasn't as simple as just assigning a bunch of variables to 0, and he had to write it by hand because
Wow.
writing the program to generate it was more trouble than writing the program in the first place. So there you have it. If you're not feeling like looping, then do this.
Roshan is asking, what are we muting here? This whole thing was like a way of just an intro to kind of MIDI for JSFX, but also it has the practical application of Leandro being able to like mute his mic on any project, or even if he has multiple instances of Reaper open, just on the exact track that he wants to mute it. So there's ways of doing it like in Reaper, but it, like, think of it as half fun, half super specific application for basically one person.
And we learned about how MIDI is received
Yeah.
and sent using JSFX. And
Yeah.
is there anything more that you want to do with this example?
I don't think so. Mage says, I thought if you were in the sample block, it was single samples. But that's how it's processed, right? Like, no matter how many channels you have, it's going through them like sample by sample, side by side, right? So that it's processing the first sample of the left channel, then the right channel, and so on, instead of going like processing all the left channel and then all the right channel.
Yeah, I think that the confusion here may be that the sample 0, 1, and 2, and 3, the people may be thinking that these are samples over time. It's not. It's the
They're
samples
across
on a
channel.
given moment, all the samples from the different channels. So it's like a vertical kind of thing, not a horizontal kind of thing. And at most, a track in Reaper may have 64 channels. That's why this works. And now there is actually something that I don't know. If a track does not have 64 channels, can you assign 0 to these channels, or is something going to blow up? I don't think so, because JSFX is pretty permissive, but let's see.
Yeah, unless it messes up the side chain structure, but I guess if you're muting the track, who cares what you're side chaining to it?
Fair, and that's a consideration that I still haven't really landed on a good answer to, because my plugins tend to be multi-channel. But what if you don't want to process the sidechain? Then you would have to know that my plugin is processing the sidechain and come here and remove the sidechain from the plugin, which can be
Why
a
not
bit
just
annoying.
adding a slider or something where you say sidechain yes, and if yes, you just do it on left and right?
Yeah, that's what I am doing in, for instance, this effect. I ask you, do you want to process mono? Do you want to process stereo? And I haven't really gotten around to it, but I am planning on having all channels. So you would have multi-channel support as well.
Nice.
And then you would need to opt into multi-channel support. Yeah, so I can see a couple of directions we could take this. I said that it could be nice for us to send a MIDI message to make a LED light up, but I think that for the most part, it would boil down to sending a MIDI message. We know how to do that. And then the rest would be just routing in Reaper for that MIDI message to get into my Arduino. We would need to perhaps pick a specific channel, like let's say channel 16, and then we would need to put a hardware output here for MIDI. If that's a thing. Is that a thing? Yes, MIDI hardware output.
Yes.
And then I can output to the Arduino. So I don't think that's terribly interesting. So do you want to look at the arpeggiator?
Yeah, let's take a look,
Let's find it first. Arpeggiator.
Does anybody in the chat share my feelings on the JS arpeggiator? I feel like sometimes it's not in time. I feel like, and of course what we're examining is whether the fact that it's block processed, but I don't think I would have heard it from that. I think there's just a problem with JS arpeggiator.
Okay, first of all, it is relatively short. So we have a chance of understanding what's going on. And second, I don't want to change this file because I want to preserve the original, so I'll create a copy.
Yeah.
And I will call this file for the folder name must be provided. Does that work? Okay. And I will put here the extension JSFX just so on my side it shows up in color. And now we can start playing around with this. Oh, since we are talking about MIDI stuff, it is good practice to specify the pins on your plugin, because even though our plugin is not... Oh, hang on. In our case, we are receiving and sending audio. But in case of a plugin that is just doing MIDI, like an arpeggiator, it is good practice to turn off the audio pins. So when you put a MIDI arpeggiator on a track, you see that the I/O is not even here.
Yeah.
The ins and outs, it's not even there, because it's MIDI. So it's a good practice to have these pins. And incidentally, this is also how you can, the in pin and out pin is how you can give names to the pins if you want them to be something other than just JS input. So you can say something like sidechain.
Sidechain, yeah.
All right.
Very
so
nice.
Then there is a list of nodes, a count of nodes.
Hello, Andres.
Hello. A little last node situation. That's remembering the previous node probably. Then we have a PB increment position. Node position and variable position. PB. What would PB be?
Yeah. Lead? I don't know. Even though it's LED, that's PB. I don't know.
Yeah,
Previous.
it feels to me like this code was written by Justin Frankel because of the abbreviations.
uh, the Bo says, never thought of it as not being in time. I just didn't like it, period. I felt like when I played with it live, it just kept making me really uncomfortable. Like, am I doing something wrong? And like, I'm sure I'm not like a stellar player, but I just felt like something about it just kept messing me up and making me not be able to play what I want to play. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we can see some code here that, first of all, we can skip over all this because this is just initializing variables. It's good to take a glance, but let's not dwell into this. And then there is a slider section. All right. This is the kind of code that one just loves to look at because it's so clear, right? And then note CNT, that's the count.
Count, yeah.
Then we have a while loop. So this while loop looks like the thing we know because we used while loops as well. But at the same time, it does not look like the thing we know.
Yeah.
This is old JSFX syntax, so I can translate this because it's not worth explaining, I don't think. I would just translate this into the syntax that we do know. It goes like this. First, get rid of that. And that's that, I think. If I didn't mess anything up. I think that is it. Hang on, why do we have two closing parens here? Am I missing something? Should it be like this?
I like that it says blah equals 1. Andres, got your question. I think I know the answer, but I'll give it to you in a second.
Okay, do you see blah something?
Yeah, right at the end of the while loop, it just says blah equals 1.
And what would blah be? It's the only occurrence of this variable. Oh, I think I know what this is. Yeah, it's old JSFX syntax. It's part of the while loop. This effect is really old, or it's at least written in a really old style. And hey, this is an event. This is a case where it makes sense to swallow events because we are transforming the node ons and node offs. So in this case, it does make sense. We do have a situation here where we have the MIDI message and it is being processed in this old way. So let me see if I can rewrite this real quick. No, it will not be that simple. But this different style is putting messages, putting bytes 2 and 3 of the MIDI message on the same variable, and then it's using bit masks. We had a whole stream about bit masks.
Yeah, a long time ago. I may need a little refresher on that.
Don't worry about it. Node is message 3.
Okay.
No, node is message 2. That's what it is. Node is message 2. That's all you need to know. But yeah, it's using this bit mask and it's using a different style here. But anyway, what is happening is we are looking at the message that came in, and then we are doing stuff if we recognize that message. We are looking at a different kind of message. And then we are doing stuff if we recognize that. If we don't, then we forward. So if you receive a note on or a note off, you will probably do something. And you will swallow the notes on and offs that came in because you're generating your own. But if you don't recognize, if it's a CC, then you just pass it through. So perhaps it was because of this kind of effect that the documentation reads the way it does. Though I would argue that probably synthesizers are more, I guess they're more reasonable. And the way that our plugin works, it's more like a synthesizer in the sense that it's receiving MIDI to affect audio. Oh, it just occurred to me. I think I remember what I tested. Remember how I said that MIDI wasn't following through in a node test of mine. It was not MIDI. It was not MIDI, it was audio. Let me test this again. If I have resynth with a good old sine wave and I have a good old square wave and I put a bunch of oscilloscopes. And then I look at the result by enabling this for recording, but changing this to MIDI and bringing in the keyboard. I don't know why I have two oscilloscopes. I'm only interested in the second, but there we have it. So when I play a note, we can see that it is mixing, it's adding the audio. So resynth is synthesizing waveforms like square waves and sine waves, but it is mixing the audio inputs into that.
Yeah. So if you go to resynth, like we can see, oh, resynth just has 2 outs. Interesting. I thought maybe just it would still just have the in pins and then it's like passing audio through, but it just only has the outs, but they are still. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
It is.
It is what I expected, because I think when I think it's just a global Reaper feature where if you have multiple MIDI instruments on a track accepting MIDI, they all play. So it's almost like their audio doesn't pass through each other, but all the audio passes through to the output of the track. Does that make sense?
That would make sense, but I don't think it's right. So now I have Surge doing, I think it's it's modern sine wave. Yeah, I think that
I think you'll get the same result.
And I think I won't. So let's see. Well, it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, they're mixing, right?
I think,
but it's different from between the two, which means like some mixing has taken place. I guess, yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah, so this is the shape we get.
This is how it was. Yeah, how it was before.
Single surge instance is generating this shape, which is surprising to me because I said it was supposed to generate a square wave. And that does not look like a square wave to me. This looks like a square wave to me. Perfect. Okay, so now there is just one surge instance. It is generating a square wave. And the square wave that it generates looks like this. It doesn't look like a square wave to me.
Yeah.
It's filtering. It's filtering the square wave. That's what it's doing. So I can go and try to turn off filters and whatnot, but I would just turn on the second surge instance to prove my point.
And see if it changes.
Because I think we'll have the same shape. And I think
it looks faster.
Oh, I played a different key.
Oh, okay. I see.
But it's the same shape.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I don't think that surge adds up in the same way that resynth does. Not by default anyway, and it is receiving just sidechain, which stands to reason. So it seems like it's completely ignoring the inputs. I guess it's not ignoring, but we would have to like say that the sidechain needs to be mixed, and I'm not even sure if that's possible, if the sidechain is just for like compressors and whatnot.
Yeah, or like filter triggers.
Fair, yeah.
Very interesting. Like I guess I've just always used like multiple MIDI synths on the same track, and I never ran into one that doesn't do this, but apparently Surge is one that doesn't do it how I've seen like Serum or, well, I mostly just use Serum to be honest. That works like Reacid.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Fotis says Jahutka has made his own JSFX arpeggiator called Darpanian. Cool name. Yeah, and again, this is mostly like academic. To be quite frank with you, I have a really good arpeggiator plugin that I use. But sometimes I want to show something like on my tutorials, and I'm like, well, let's just use the default. And then the default arpeggiator is, I'm not a major fan.
What is the arpeggiator that you like?
I like the whatchamacallit. It's called Arpeggio Gnome. And it was an app on iOS, but also there's a computer version of it. I really like it. Arpeggio Gnome. No, like a metronome and arpeggio together. No G, yeah. Arpeggio Gnome, yeah.
Nice. I didn't know this one.
It's a matrix arpeggiator. It's really fun to play with. So that's the like App Store version because it relies on touchscreen. But
is there a VST version of this that you use?
But I think it's not by the people who made the OST version. Like, is that? Yeah, just call VST. Let me check. Let me check what the name is on mine too. Why can't I find it? R, just AR. Well, this is interesting. I can't find it.
What you gonna do? Do you want to dive back into the code here?
Yeah. When I find it, I'll let everybody know the name. Maybe it doesn't have ARP in it.
Okay. Yeah, so there is this sample block here that I am not really sure why the sample block is sending MIDI.
So apparently that's allowed.
Apparently it is allowed, but and you even give it the offset.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I thought that an arpeggiator had no business even having a sample block, but it seems like it has. But one thing is interesting to me. So first of all, MIDI receive is in a single place. And then we have a bunch of MIDI sends. So what you're saying is not that the notes are wrong, you're saying that the timing is weird.
Yeah, the timing is like, I don't know, when you're playing it live, it feels like slightly late, or sometimes the rhythm is messed up. So it should be like da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's like slightly shuffled, like da-da-da-da-da, like, just slightly off. Not as much as I was just playing with my mouth. I was exaggerating, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe we should be looking into the first argument that we know to be an offset. Mm-hmm. Because if the offset into the sample block is wrong, then you would get things slightly off.
Yeah. So and the offset value is in samples, right?
The offset value is in samples, I think. It could also be in ticks, but I think it's in samples.
Oh, ticks. It could be ticks because it's TS. Is that what
maybe
TS means?
I don't know. It is not explaining much about the offset in the documentation, is it?
Right.
Okay. Send at sample offset 10. So it seems like the offset is in terms of samples.
Mage says if the sample rate is 48K and block size is 1024, the MIDI data will be checked 48 times a second in block. It would be difficult to hear a 1/48th of a second timing error. Oh yeah, like if it's off by a few samples, I wouldn't hear it. So I'm not saying that's the issue. Yeah, I would like I agree with you 100% on that. I wouldn't be able to hear 1/48th of a second. Yeah.
Yeah, so the offset here really is in samples, it seems. And that makes sense because even though MIDI really does not think in terms of samples, MIDI thinks in terms of ticks. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually talked about this in more detail on our meetings of the C++ study group because Cwits is working on something that has to do with MIDI. But it seems like this is just in samples. That's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should be looking at this first argument, and we have 7 places we would need to look at to make sense of this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can ignore the places where it is note off.
Right.
Because the note offs they may mess up the time, but I think it's mostly the onset of a note that messes up the time, right? Your perception of time. So I would be ignoring that, and I would probably be looking at, well, this one we can ignore too, because this one is the one we just forward messages we didn't recognize. So we can ignore this one, we can ignore that one, and then we can ignore this one. So let's move on to the next. And the next is also a note off. I would not worry about it. Then we have 2 places where we are sending note ons.
Yeah.
And 3 places where we are sending note ons. And then we would need to see what the position is in these 3 places. It is always SPOS, probably for send position.
Yeah.
So if there is a problem, it has to do with the send position being incorrect. And there is a send position plus equals 1 commented out in the source. If you uncomment this, does it get better?
That's
Maybe.
the question. My theory about SPOS is that, well, like in an arpeggiator, you may press 3 notes, and then you need to send like note on, note off of first, note on, note off of second, note on, note off of third. And you need to do that in a time. So the SPOS offset, is it just doing that? Like, does it calculate? No, it can't do that. It can't calculate the like rhythmic time and then offset it by samples. That sounds like a stupid solution because, like, if you're doing quarter notes in 60 BPM, how many samples later will the second note have to hit, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So here is something. We can highlight SPOS and we can see everywhere where it's used. So we see that in the block section, it is reset.
Okay, so 0 every
block,
time.
Every block resets SPOS. Okay. Moving on. On the sample section, the first sample in the block it's a note off. Okay, forget about it.
Okay.
Then, if the note count is greater than 0, that makes sense. If we have notes to play, then we will do stuff to SPOS by just sending MIDI messages. So check this out. There are 6 occurrences of SPOS. The first is setting it to 0, and then it is used on MIDI send. MIDI send is not magic, okay? MIDI send is pass by value. It will not change the value of SPOS.
Right.
Not that I know of, anyway. It shouldn't be. I don't think it should be I don't think it should be changing the value of this variable. So it's being SPOS is red in this situation, so it's 0. Here it's red, it's 0. Here it's red, it's 0. Here it's commented out. So it seems like there is either this should not be commented out or there is something off because it is sending all the onsets in the beginning of the block. If your block size is small, it may be okay. But it may not be. It may not be because you are just shuffling the notes around kind of randomly in the block. They may be at most 1 block off. It seems pretty bad. It seems like it's by accident this is here. It seems like a bug.
Yeah. Because, okay, if we also uncomment that, basically it'll go up through the sample block, then on the next block it will be set back to 0, and then it would just go up by a certain amount, right?
Yeah, so it seems to me that this is sort of the implementation of Tails' idea. Oops, bumps into the microphone. It seems to me like they wanted to reason about sending MIDI messages at the sample level. So this S pause, it's probably for sample position, the sample position within the block. And this way you can write stuff on the sample section you can write code in the sample section and have it reason in terms of MIDI notes like that. So it seems to me like that's what they wanted. They wanted to reset S pause in the beginning of the block and add one on every sample, just like this.
Gotcha.
So I want to test this theory, and to do it, first, I will rename the effect. And second, we need to come up with a testing scenario for this. I guess before we do that, I don't remember if I changed structural things that may break it. So let's this is the original MIDI arpeggiator. I'll select it for a compare, and I will compare it with our version. And it seems like we changed the description, and we changed the style of the while loop. I actually don't want to change the style of the while loop because we are investigating something else. So I will take this, except for the first line. I will take that, except for the first line, and paste. And that's the silliest way of resetting a file. So now we are back to where we started. And this is essentially just the original MIDI arpeggiator. Let's see if we can come up with a test scenario that makes the error appear consistently. So I guess we will need some kind of MIDI item with a
chord.
Okay, fair enough. And then I take the arpeggiator, but the debug version. Drop it there. And when I glue this, it creates an item. Now, our theory is that this is off by a block. So we could zoom in, and I guess we can see that here, right?
Jeez.
This doesn't feel right to me, right?
It doesn't feel right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's just do the simple thing we proposed. I'm going to... maybe I'll duplicate this item for reference. So how do I do that? Hang on. Okay, this is the original. This is the one that I'm going to call the original. And I know I am over the leader, but this is bugging me, so there you have it. Okay, so this is the original. Now let's revisit this, and this is our version. We uncomment this line, and I'll make a copy of this, but really I want to drop this fresh because I want to make sure that it's getting the last one. And then I glue, and then, hey, it's looking better.
Yeah, it looks on time. What?
Yeah, it seems like a
bug. So was
bug.
that all it took?
It seems like a bug. It's something that we should talk about on the forum. It's something that we should search about in the forums, because maybe this is like that for a good reason. But if it's not,
I should make a Dan Worrell style video. But then everybody will be like, "Oh well, there's a JSFX called the Arpanian. That's the arpeggiator." And I'll be like, "You guys, let me be famous. Give me 70,000 subscribers, YouTube. Thank you."
Yeah, definitely something that we should talk about in the forums if it hasn't been talked about already, because it seems like a bug.
Mm.
And I don't think you would be able to hear this difference exactly, but if it repeats
Yeah.
and it's off,
Yeah.
and if your block size is big, yeah, I think it
Mm-hmm.
gets worse. Let's make a really big block size and test this.
Well, like if so when I noticed that was playing live, so my block size would have been small, but you're right, it's like an accumulative effect of just things not being tight. And then when you also another thing is when you change chords, so say I'm playing like C, E, and G, and I take my finger off the G and I put it on A. On most arpeggiators, it will preserve that timing, and then it would just start. Let's say it's going up, it will go C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, and then C, E, A, C, E, A. But with the MIDI arpeggiator, it like when you change it, it instantly kind of like fucks up the timing. A little bit. So the type of arpeggiator, at least that I like, is that it's like an engine. It keeps playing eighths, let's say, and then as you're changing notes, it's just replacing. It's like swapping out notes and replacing them.
Yeah, we can try that. But first, let me finish what I started, which is to
Big
see if
buffer.
our version will make this better. So this is this is the fixed big buffer. This is just the fixed version, the small buffer, and I will drop the debug version and glue. Hey, even with a very big buffer size, it's still okay.
Cool.
I wonder why they commented this out.
Maybe it was like maybe it was being tested, and then the very last moment, like it just stayed commented out, right?
Maybe. Okay, so do you want to play around with?
Yeah, do you have a keyboard to
changes?
play live with? But or yeah, we can just play around with switching it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is more scientific. So I will get into this and I will make 3 chords. Why 3? I don't know. It probably should have been 4. And I will make this an F, and I will make a G. Like so.
But I also want one more test, if possible, and that is to keep the C and E ringing and just change the G to an A. So 2 notes are continuously playing and being held, and 1 note is changing.
How about we do first this simple test and then the one that you asked for. So
sure.
I will just do this and change this into that. Not a good sounding chord, but I'll take it.
But also keep the F and the C continuous. So now a new MIDI note on will trigger. Yeah, just keep them going.
I know I probably should have used the keyboard shortcut or something, but I didn't. I don't know it. All right, good. So this is the test that we are looking for. Now I will just delete all of these. Or I won't. I will just keep them. Aria is on the call. I will keep them. So we want copies of all of these, and we want to find the original and drop on. Actually, it doesn't need to be repeated because I'm on the big buffer size now, which makes everything easier to see. So goodbye, guys. And let's start over. So this is the original, and this is the fixed version.
Okay, time edge, time edge. Difference.
Yeah. It's changing the time, but it's not changing the notes.
So, let me see. Oh, and it is working how I like it in that chord change, which is it's keeping the rhythm going and it's just swapping out the note there.
Okay. So let me see if I understand what you mean. What you're saying is that because you changed this middle note, you wouldn't want the pattern to
be disrupted.
Yeah, and it's still going up. It's still going like da 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 da, and that's what you wanted, right? What you did
Yeah.
not want to
Yeah.
see was like this lower note here.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. But the original was also doing that. It's just that, I mean, with
The
this big
original's
buffer
doing
size, this
fine,
is
yeah.
off by like an eighth note.
Yeah.
Not really, but
Yeah,
16th.
yeah.
16th. It's going off by a 16th,
Yeah.
almost. Lots of swing.
Yeah, big swing, right? Big swing. And here's another thing, speaking of swing, is that we can see that they're different by varying degrees, which contributes to how it's sounding like super odd, right? So, and that's because it's based on the block size and not based on any musical rhythmic value.
Yeah.
So that's why it was always like really throwing me off when I was playing with it live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
even
if,
the other thing,
if you're running like, suppose let's do some maths here to see how noticeable that could be. So a good sample rate is 48,000, and
Sure.
we are probably a good block size for playing live. What do you play live with? 256?
Well, like even 128, to be honest.
Okay, but let's go 256 because this
Sure.
will accentuate the effect. So we are talking about, let's say that the first note is supposed to be in the beginning of the block and the next note is supposed to be at the end of the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So at the most, I think that the difference will be of 2 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just 1 block, but let's say that it's 2 blocks. So we have a difference of 512.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, 512 samples is how much of, it is 10 milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's not really noticeable, 10 milliseconds, but I think that over time it gets a bit wonky.
The accumulated effect of it definitely starts to get noticeable, like because basically how we see in that item, the first note or the second note, right, is like off by say that amount, and then that gets added to the third note, which is now that needs to be on the 3, and that's like a half of a 16th off, and then the fourth note is half of a 16th off. And then it kind of corrects itself on bar 3, and then bar 4. Now we're like way more than half of a 16th off when the new note comes in. So it like also shifts around. So it's definitely like I'm definitely not a person who claims to notice like a 1 millisecond latency or anything like that. But definitely when you're playing live and definitely when you're playing fast, like it's enough to make you like kind of question things, right?
Yeah, so here is what I propose.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer see my screen. I see my screen. You don't.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do the setup for the test first.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah, you see where this is going. I will do the setup for the test.
But I will say one thing before you test me. If I'm playing it, it's a different story than if I'm hearing it.
I will play.
Because it's
I will play with a
tactile-
metronome. I will play with a metronome
Okay.
to make up for this.
But again,
And-
if I'm playing it, it's very different. I want to go on record saying that.
okay, so here is a
Yeah.
different test, Arya. Here is a different test. Are you able to play something right now? Do you have a MIDI controller near you, or can you play with the
I
keyboard?
don't have. I can grab one, but it'll take some time.
No, but can you play with your computer keyboard?
Sure.
Using the virtual keyboard. Okay,
Sure.
so you know how to fix the effect. You know how to fix the arpeggiator. You just have to uncomment the last line. So do you want on your machine to do this setup where you uncomment the last line on a copy of the plugin, drop them into different tracks and play and see if you can notice the difference? While I will do the same setup here with a metronome and we can see if we can hear the difference.
Sounds good. Let's give it a go. Okay, so give me one of these. I'll go to view. I don't think I ever opened the virtual MIDI keyboard in my life.
It's option B.
Nice. Do you use it often?
No.
Oh.
But I had to open it, so I saw the keyboard shortcut.
Can I also complain about another thing?
Yeah, sure.
What is up with how the hotkeys on the virtual MIDI keyboard are set up by default? Like, what the hell?
What?
So on the virtual MIDI keyboard, like on a lot of other DAWs, it's kind of like you take the second row of keys, A, S, D, F, G, H, you take those as white keys, and then you go like take the black keys as like W, E, and then skip R, T, Y, U, skip I, O, P. But this is just insanity. It's like Z, S, X, D.
Oh, hang
it's
on,
the row
Arya.
below. It's the row below.
It is much
Got it.
smarter because then you have 2 octaves.
Yeah, I got you. And on mine it's different though. On mine, right now my E note is Z, and then my F note is S, and then my F sharp is X.
Okay, right click on a note and it will shift the Z.
Okay, all right. I'll allow it.
Yeah, the
You
note
win
you
this
right
round,
click is your
Reaper.
middle C at the Q
Yeah.
letter. Yeah.
Okay, so that part is fixed. And now let's put a MIDI arpeggiator. The arpeggiator.
This metronome is loud. I like my metronome.
Also
loud.
go fast if you want to go fast. You want to go fast? What?
I guess the easiest way for me to do that is just up the BPM. So that's what I will do.
You can up the rate.
Oh, good point. But I have already rendered. I have burned the effects.
That was the fixed version.
The clicks get obnoxious with this kind of...
Yeah, that's why you should maybe go back and do up.
I'll do it. I'm doing it. Oh, and it may be better because it will accentuate the effect. If I burn in the arpeggiator, it will be the same wonkiness every time. But if I let the arpeggiator running, there is no guarantee that my loop will have an integer multiple of my sample rate.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing, Leandro. Like, literally, I set the rate to 4, so it's playing 16ths. And I just hold one note down. It's not playing 16th. It's going... It's like, it's very obvious to hear IMO. So you want to test that in front of a live audience?
That's what we are about to do.
Everybody will hear it.
Yeah, you said that we need to increase the rate. So let's go 4 times, 5 times.
Let's go 4, so it's 16ths. 5 times, it's like triplet 16ths. So let's not muddy the waters. It's supposed to be.
This is a bit loud. I will turn it down for the benefit of everyone's ears. And
it's just...
Oh, I did not increase the rate on that one. I forgot.
Because I think the whole point of arpeggio is for people who don't play well and fast, but I can beat how much tightens, like how much the arpeggiator tightens up faster passages. That's correct to me. Oh, it's wonky as fuck. In fact, play them together. We'll hear the offset as like a doubling. Like play both same time. It's a train wreck.
Because we're playing sine waves, if you phase inverse, they should null nicely. Anyway, yeah.
Very wonky.
Very wonky. But just for the sake of it, hey, let's throw the dice. And I will give you one. I will give you one.
Okay. That's the fucked one.
That's the
the
other one.
tight one.
Yeah, it's not that difficult. And when playing, you also felt this. And did you fix and play?
No, I was just gonna show something in a tutorial once, and I grabbed the JS arpeggiator, and I was like, "Oh,
No,
well,
no, no,
this
no,
sounds
no.
awful."
What I'm
Ah,
saying is, right now, did you create a copy of the
ah,
effect and fixed it and played to see if it feels better?
okay. Let me give that a go. I'm not even gonna. I'm just gonna live dangerously and alter the original.
Fair enough.
Option B, and let's go. Wait. Oh. I need to. Do I need to change this?
Can you share your screen on Skype real quick to make this more entertaining?
Sure. Yeah. So, that's my screen. This is this. So yeah, if I right click like on a note, it'll shift this. That's kind of cool. Okay, so now let's shift it up here.
We don't hear your audio from your computer, but I guess that's
Oh,
okay because you're just going to express. We already heard coming from my computer. We
yeah.
already heard what the effect sounds like. So I guess it's just you doing the setup, and then you can share how you feel about playing the correct version.
Yeah, this works now.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. You just fixed something.
Yay! All right, I want 30,000 subscribers by tomorrow, or else.
Are you going to be in charge of actually submitting the request on the forums, or it's probably going to be a bug request, a bug fix, I suppose?
Yeah.
A bug report.
I think,
fix.
if you make a video, it'll always be more effective because Dan Worrell didn't post about the compressor. He just schooled everybody.
Well,
No,
that's
but
what we just did.
yeah. No, I will just make it. I'll make a RIA forums post. Why not?
Remember to search before you post, right? Because you don't want to accidentally
I feel like I
repost
just
something.
want to make a video and be a dick about it. You know? That sounds like the more fun option.
Don't.
I just love, and I'm big time like wondering what other videos to do, so it feels like I got some ammo on this.
Right. Anything else that we wanted to explore? I think we covered everything, right?
Yeah. Do you want to hear of a MIDI effect that I want to make maybe on a later stream if you're down?
Yeah. What is it?
Okay, so what you can do in Reaper, like you get an audio file. Let's say it's like a percussion loop, right? You can then split it at transients, and you can make it a MIDI instrument where like the first transient is on C1, second transient is on C#1, third transient is on D, etc. So I do this a lot where I take a loop and then I kind of perform it to create another loop, but it's made up of the same loop. And sometimes
this is getting a bit abstract. Can you do that real quick?
Sure, let me show you. So one thing we can do, I even have a loop right here.
Are you still sharing your screen on Skype? It doesn't seem like you are.
Wumpsicles joinks. Okay, you won't hear much audio or any audio at all, but you get a loop like this, right? And you can then split it at transients, and you can make it an arpeggiator, and the good old MPL has an action for this, which is export. Oh, I guess first you just dynamic split it. Let's do it real dirty. And boop 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 boop. Why is this looking like this? This needs to be on, but it's not.
That's because you're not splitting on the note end. Is it not?
No, you can split at transients. And this. Oh yeah. Okay. Now it's showing. It's just a bad color, so you don't see the things. Let's just split it quick and dirty. Now we got like splits of items. Now I can grab these. I can go to MPL RS5. Okay, forget the name of the action. Explore selected items. On selected track, show blowing Cs. Set base pitch. Let's set it to C dos. Boinks. There's a little bit of this.
I never understood why people use resample-matic for this. It seems like such a hack. It's a cool hack that it's one of those things that I would probably do, like we did the mute thing today.
Yeah.
But I don't know why people actually use this. It's such a hack.
But what's the alternative?
Something like, what's the name of the thing? I'm blanking on the name. It's this little VST that is free, and you just drop samples there, and you can play them. What's the name of the thing?
Crybaby, something baby, mega baby.
No. That's a sequencer.
Right.
Crybaby is a wah pedal.
Yeah, I just.
And Baby H is a sequencer. No, yeah. I am thinking of Decomposer Citala.
Oh.
Citala.
Oh, okay.
Do you know this one?
Yeah. I think I even got it somewhere. But then when you chop this, so the cool thing with this is it chops it.
Yeah, so
and then it grabs all the chops.
Showing here,
right?
By the way. But yeah, okay. So Citala is able to do all this that we talked about. It's able to just take a bunch of files, and you probably can even drag and drop them because Citala has some extensions for Reaper, so maybe even that works. But anyway,
but if you want to drag and drop them, this just does it in sequence of time from notes, right? So it just goes in sequence. So this one's D sharp, next one is E flat, next one is E. So one thing I do with this is that I start playing this, right? And I won't play this right now because I think this loop may get me copy. Oh, you don't hear my sound anyway. But then, yeah, I start just like basically playing these chops to get my own rhythm. But one thing I got to do is to progress naturally through the track, I got to play the note chromatically. So basically, the MIDI effect that I have in mind works like this. If you press C0, you'll get C0. From there, if you press D, you'll get the next note up. So if I press D the first time, I will get C sharp 0. And if I play it a second time, I get D. And if I play it a third time, I get D sharp 0. And if I play it a fourth time, I get E. And if you press then B, you go back one note. So then I'm at E. Press B once, I get D sharp 0. Press B another time, I go back to D, like this. So basically, it's like instead of playing like notes, I'm playing root note and then next and previous note chromatically up or down. And I mean, you can set it to scales and stuff as well, but that's basically what I want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you want the keyboard to not be absolute notes. You want them to be relative notes.
Relative, yeah.
This feels familiar to me. I remember seeing some kind of application that did exactly that.
Yeah, there is InstaScale, and it's by another Iranian person. So that's kind of fun. And InstaScale does this, and it's like very complex. It does a lot of things. But basically, I just want this little bit of it to be a JS situation so that I can show something in a tutorial.
I see. Yeah, okay. It doesn't sound too complicated. We would be, I guess, yeah, we would be receiving the MIDI events and sending MIDI events, and we would be
keeping track, basically, of the note
internally message. As some internal stage, we would need to know what is the note that we're currently on. And it's always legato, right? You are always just note off, note on. Note off, note on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Fair enough.
Once you play a note, once you play a second note, you can send a note off to the previous note. Yeah.
And also, you probably want this to be like, if you play a D, it will go to the next one. If you play an E, it will jump to, right? So it becomes really a relative keyboard where you don't play notes, you play intervals.
Basically.
That should be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, and it should be fun. Let me read the chat a little bit because a lot of things. So Mage says the docs recommend doing MIDI processing in the block. What is it? The block?
The block section.
The block section, yeah. And I can understand why we need to take into account the sample offset for received and sent MIDI messages, but not in sample. But that's not what we did. That's how the JS arpeggiator was written, right? We didn't do that.
Yeah, it seems like back in the day, maybe that was how you did it. I kind of like processing MIDI on the sample block. Makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
But
maybe a tick block would be cool to like be added to JSFX.
Maybe, yeah. But I think that probably it would not make a whole lot of difference. And if your MIDI has sample accurate automation, you probably want to think about this in terms of samples.
Samples, yeah. Reaper Blog is here. Hi, Reaper Blog. How you doing? Citala is good for drums. Wouldn't consider for chromatic playing. Yeah, exactly. Like Citala is nice for what it's actually for. But then this is kind of not what Citala is actually for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Andres says, don't forget about me. Oh, yeah, okay. So Andres is asking that he uses a mix pre to record a bunch of microphones with timecode, and then he takes it to Reaper to split the poly wave file and then send it to RX9 to process. But when you export the file, it uses Reaper timecode instead of the file timecode. So now that it's good that Reaper Blog is here for this, because I think if you are using like glue or render, that will just burn in the timecode from your Reaper project. If you are using the render section like a normal person would do, you have to obviously like not embed any metadata, but I think not embedding metadata will then render a file with no metadata. It wouldn't pass through the metadata. So I mean, a quick and dirty way of dealing with this is just using Audacity to split your polywave files, because Audacity just like passes through metadata if you don't add any N. But I don't know, John, do you have something for this? And if not, you just have to import them into a project where the timecode is in sync with the thingamabobble. And there is an action for that. Let me share my screen again, and maybe you can show the class, Leandro. I don't remember the name of the action, but I think my hotkey was no. It is called source time. Maybe it's not source time. It is move item original. No, it just has the word original in it for sure. I'll find it. It's not any of this. Where is it? Where is that action? There's an action that puts things to the reported time code, and that's what I use if I bring like files from a Pro Tools project real quick. But why do I not see it right now? Maybe it's not original. Maybe it's stamp, timestamp, something. Come on. It's not even that. Place item. I'll find this action with the Lord as my witness. It's a native Reaper action too. Original. If anybody knows this, put it in the chat. We checked original. There was nothing there. Time, just time. Let's just do time. It's a lot of time stuff, but we'll find it for sure. And not view, not transport, not time selection, not set default, not SWS, not options, not markers, items. Boop, 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 boop. If you're not here, I'm gonna kill myself. What the fuck's going on? I don't know what is going on. Why? I swear there was an action, and I swear my hotkey for it was Command, Control, Option, and M, but that didn't give us anything. So could a thing have been taken out of the situation? Point was that there's this action that moved things to the time code that the source item is reporting, and then and you don't need to change your time code, but else just change your time code in the project, and then when you export, it'll have the same thing, or just use a different program to do this. Let's just search time code. Maybe there's time code things that are the thing that I need. Otherwise, it's gone. It could be totally gone. Yeah, I mean, you can use like a go-to time code situation too, right? And then go to the time code that your audio starts in, and Bob's your uncle from there. I know this is not very satisfying with that cool action, but I think that action may be gone. I don't know. Let's read the chat to see if anybody is going to school me. Not finding the move item to preferred position. That's exactly what it is. Where is that? Preferred. Oh, so wait, what is my hotkey for it? Command, Option, Shift, and M. Okay, I'm an idiot. Yeah. So you do that, and then the time code above will match the time code below. And that'll be a Bob's your uncle type of situation. Is that satisfactory at all, Andres? Let's go back to the regular page.
Okay, you probably have noticed that I have been keeping silent here because I think we almost have the plugin you want.
Oh.
Yeah, I was not paying attention to what you're saying, by the way. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
can rewatch
fine.
later.
It's fine, yeah. You don't have a mix pre.
So let's read what I wrote. I call it the relative MIDI keyboard.
Wow, you just wrote it. Okay.
Yeah, while you were talking,
Okay.
I was writing this. So
nice.
The bass note is the middle C. I put a recontrol MIDI here and I played C4. That's middle C, right? It's MIDI note 60.
Yeah.
I could always find a table online, but this seemed like the right thing to do. So I am detecting the note on. And remember, this is legato, so I only care about note on. I don't care about note off. So if the note is on and it's not 0, so yeah, it really is a note on. It's not a note off in disguise. Then send a MIDI message. We know that H is note off. That's what we learned here. So note off of the current note with a velocity of 0. Then do the relative update. This current variable here is the current MIDI note. I will update this by taking the base value and subtracting the note that was played. I probably should rename these variables. This is the action and channel. This is the note, and this is velocity. Much better. Well, it's actually incorrect because we don't know.
The note, maybe change the note to value so that it's like if it's a CC, it makes sense. But I guess in this case, we don't want, I was going to say we don't want this to work with CC, but that could be a fun thing to do with CC too.
But CC will not send a 9.
That's right, yeah. So forget about that bit.
Yeah, so I'm just going to rename this action and channel because it is the right thing in this context, but message 2 and 3 really can be renamed here, and they can become the note, and this is the velocity. And then I will change, this should be that, and this should be note. There you have it. And I guess I will call this the base
Watch the
note.
0 next to velocity on line, the fourth line from down.
Hang on, say that again.
On the second to last MIDI send function, the one below that, you're saying 0 velocity. Just remove
Thank
that
you.
0.
Right, okay, so now I renamed things in the way that makes sense, because message 2 and 3 really are note and velocity only in the case of this, right? Other messages would not be note, like CC would not be a note. And also, while we are here, it's message 2 and message 3. Now it's more like code that I would write. Hey. Okay, so the way that this works is when we receive a note on, assign the variables to the right names, then send a note off to the current note. And I know to begin with, I will be sending a note off to a note that hasn't received a note on, but who cares? It's probably just going to be ignored by most soft synths anyway. Then I update the current note based on the base note minus the note that was actually played. So your middle C is going to keep playing the same note, and then C# is going to go to the next one, and B is going to go to the previous one.
Gotcha.
Then send a note on the same offset. So instantaneously, we are going to send note off, note on of the current note, which has been updated with the velocity that was passed. And then otherwise, if I don't recognize this message, then just pass it along. That's what the plugin does.
Fun.
So let's give it a try by... I will put 2 MIDI controls, one on the left, one on the right, logging the messages, and I will put our little effect in the middle, and I called it relative something something. This is getting a bit busy, but I think we'll do it. So we have our keyboard on the top. This is the first, and this is the second logger. So what expect to see is just the events are going to show up here, and the modified events will show up there. So we are receiving, the note off is passing through. That's what this second note off is. We should not be forwarding all events. We should be forwarding events that are not note offs.
No, but you should have the note off still received from us, because maybe I just want to play one note and then stop and then play the next note later. That should still be an option.
Ah, I see. Okay, so in that case, I am going to send note off, but I should not be sending it to this. I should be sending it to the current note. Well, I guess I should recognize that it is a note off and then pass it through. So I will recognize that it is a note off. So if it is a note off, or
that way.
Hang on. If
one of these, then do that.
And here to the current. Okay, so the action and channel is note off, or the action and channel is note on with a velocity of 0.
And current note, of course. You just said current.
Fair point. Do you expect to play multiple notes on the keyboard? Please don't do that.
Okay, I won't do it.
So offset, action, and channel passes through. Nope. I want to send a note off. And this doesn't pass through either. I want to send a 0 there. So this is sending a note off to the current pressed key. And if I don't recognize this, then I just pass it along, maybe a CC, for instance. Okay, let's try
Shouldn't
that.
that be current underscore note though? Because what does current mean?
Thank you. Saved as a debug session.
While you do that, I'll just read what Reaper blog, or glue action might lose metadata. Yeah, like whatever metadata you have, once you glue, it'll be like the default render setting. So you can disable metadata, or you can enable it, but you can't pass through original metadata as far as I know. So Reaper blog's suggestion to make up a drag and drop FFmpeg script, I think that's the best way to go, because also you're going to RX, you're not going directly to Reaper. Or maybe you're going to RX via Reaper, like setting RX as a secondary editor. But just make a script. Don't involve Reaper in that part of the thing. Then the stuff that you corrected after RX, bring those into Reaper. And that kind of makes sense to me.
I will plug one of my own actions, may I?
Yeah, please.
I do have an action that does not do what you want, I think. I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to this because I was looking at the code and trying to find mistakes. But anyway, I do have this action that is called explode multi-stream, multi-track media file to new one-stream, one-track media files. Hey!
Does it preserve metadata?
What it does...
Of the original?
What it does is it will look at a file that has multiple streams of audio, so maybe an MKV that you recorded using OBS with multi-track support.
Yeah,
that was the original use case for this. So it will look at it will look at that kind of file. It will call FFmpeg for you, and it will transform the file. So if you make stuff, if your workflow involves just working with files in Finder, and then later you're going to bring them to Reaper, forget about this. It doesn't apply to you. But if you already have files on the timeline, and you really wish to just run them through FFmpeg and bring them back, then if the exact thing you want to do is what I described, to explode the multiple tracks in a file, then just go ahead and use this. But I don't think that's what you're looking for. But what I propose is that you go into this file and look at how it works, because essentially what it's doing is just going to the command line and calling FFmpeg somewhere here. It is calling FFmpeg, and then it is taking the resulting files and putting them on the timeline. So you should be able to, with a bit of effort, you should be able to understand how this works. It is just 100 lines of code. It's not terribly complicated.
And it looks fucking complicated.
Well, it depends on how much time you want to spend on this and how much effort it is worth automating this kind of thing. But you may be able to just call FFmpeg on the command line to do some processing for you externally and then bring the results back into Reaper with a single action. If that's something that you find yourself doing often, then you may want to automate, and this is a good jumping off point. But that's the end of my plug. And do you want to test this version that you helped me fix?
Sure, Andres, let us know if that seems like a challenge you'd be up to. Otherwise, maybe today we've already been streaming for too long, but maybe we can try and modify this and meanwhile do a code review of that explode action. Because if you're splitting from FFmpeg, I think the metadata will be preserved and then imported just as new source files into Reaper. So that could be your ticket. Or that seems to be exactly your ticket.
Or maybe you just need to go into my into my action and change the command line flags. Because then the thing you're trying to do is actually to explode items, right? So
he's basically just gonna explode like an 8-channel wave file into 8 mono wave files, but he wants to preserve the time code that is embedded into the polywave file.
I'm pretty sure FFmpeg will be able to do that for you, and you just have to change the command line arguments from my script, and it's probably going to work. And really, if you are in a hurry and you really need this, and you need the thing to work in Reaper, I'm available for hire. Just go ahead.
There you go.
And you can have it. All right. Anyway, so we play a note, and it sends that
Yeah.
initial note off. I'm pointing
Yeah,
at
which
my
is
screen,
fine.
which is ridiculous. On the right, we can see a note off.
Yeah.
And that's the bogus note off in the beginning. That's all right. I'm still holding the note. And we have a note on for that note. That's correct. Then I release, and we see the note off there. And then when I play this, I expect to see note 61. We know that this is note 62. I expect to see note 61 because I want this to be relative.
Uh-huh.
Or no, rather, I need to press this, right? Because the current note is C4. I will press this, it will go to 61. It goes to 59, good enough. I press it again, it goes to 58. So we have the
Because
right
you did
thing.
a minus in the code, right? It should just be a plus.
No, it should be a minus, but it should be the other way around.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Base note minus note. There we go.
Okay, so we start here in the middle C. Let's clear these loggers. And what I expect to see is it going up. There you go, a relative MIDI
Beautiful.
keyboard.
And then if you go back, does it now go to 66? Beautiful. All right, that's what I wanted.
Yeah. And here it is. That was fun.
Nice.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the show, right?
I think so. I wanted to like stream for 90 minutes so that people later will see a more manageable length of stream to watch. But anyway, you know, when you're having fun, time flies. So thanks everybody for watching. Andres, let us know if you need more help with that. I think it's very doable. Thanks to, you know, you got your Roshan, you got Mage, you got Bops, you got Bo, you got Fotis, all the people who watch these streams. It's very fun to do. We'll do more of them. Today we were supposed to do a mastering stream, but Darren couldn't make it. So hopefully we'll do that next week. Otherwise, me and Leandro may come and do some weird stuff. Any last words, Leandro?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this session. We learned about how MIDI works in JSFX. We learned about MIDI messages, which is a concept that really transfers to any environment. We found a bug in a stock Reaper plugin, and then we even created a new plugin that does what you wanted. So that's a win in my book. Great stream.
Yeah, I think Dan Worrell status achieved.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's always fun to code with you and to look at weird things. So
I guess before we finish, just tell us what you got going on your channel these days.
yeah, right. So I am working on my auto mixer, and that's an effect that may interest people who do post-production or maybe even live events when they have multiple microphones open and you want to prevent the bleed well, you want to attenuate bleed from one person speaking into the other microphones that are in the environment. And that's what I'm in the middle of doing. I may or may not to get to more electronics kind of things in this week. It depends on whether I can get the parts I need. So yeah, I am streaming almost every weekday at 17:30 UTC. So people should go to my channel and find out more about it.
Yeah. So that's that. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you hopefully soon with a video, if not next week with a live stream, or maybe both.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.